The Torah is very relevant. What do I mean very relevant? It is relevant to everything, for everything, at every time and every place. This week's Torah portion talks about the importance of a vow and how you're not supposed to cheapen your word. If you say something, you must mean it and fulfill it. And only when you fulfill a vow, you shouldn't say anything. But if you say something, your words have to have meaning and you have to follow through on your words. This president is unpopular for a number of reasons. But the most important reason that has come out recently is because he said things and he meant what he said. He was for greater border security. And that's what he's doing. He's trying to get a handle on the border. And that gets the Democrats all riled up. It makes people wonder. He said it, but politicians never follow through on what they say. He talked about how NATO has to be altered and changed into not a political conglomerate, but actually a fighting force capable of repulsing Russian advancements, such as what Russia did to the Ukraine. If NATO doesn't get its act together, then the Eastern Bloc nations that used to be under the control of the Soviet Union will fall under the military might of Putin. He doesn't like the fact that Russia's gotten smaller, that its influence has decreased, that its wealth has decreased, that its population has gotten smaller. Population today is half of what it was, and they're not making enough babies to repopulate this giant area of over 6.5 million square miles. And if they don't watch out, their eastern border is going to be overrun by hundreds of millions of Chinese. That's the reality. The only reason why they haven't up until now is because the Russians had millions of soldiers at the Chinese border, the Manchurian border, preventing any kind of mass exodus from China to Siberia. So Putin is not happy with the fact they've got less people, less influence, less money, less resources, and it looks like they're going to become extinct. He doesn't like that, so he wants to make sure that Russia is still going to be around for the next 100 years. How do you do that? Well, you expand its borders, expand its wealth, and you take those peoples that used to be your allies, take them back, force them to become part of your military operation. That's a strategy for winning. If you want to prevent that, you have to have a strong NATO. That means that NATO has to be prepared for war. So two things, you have to have the armaments. And if you don't supply the necessary funds for defense, you won't have the armaments. So they're all banking on America. America doesn't need to do that. America's got no interest in the Eastern Bloc and the Poles, the Lats and Lithuanians. America's got no strategic interest in Ukraine either. The only one who's got strategic interest in Ukraine and those Eastern Bloc nations are the Western Europeans. And they should be pulling their fair share. And that's what Trump said. And by golly, that's what he's doing. He's demanding that they pull their fair share. And why is he criticizing Angela Merkel? And all of the pundits got it wrong. You see, yeah, everybody trades with Russia. But the Germans have no gas. They have no energy for supplying heat in the winter. What happens if they get into a conflict with Russia and their sole supplier of gas are the Russians? The Russians just turn off the spigot and bang, Germany, the biggest baddest, most powerful nation in Central Europe and Europe is out of the picture. They can't fight because they can't do anything without gas. That's what he was talking about. Yeah, you can trade with the Russians, but not essentials. Your essentials got to come somewhere else, or else you're a sitting duck. He's absolutely right. And all the other pundits on CNN and even on Fox got it all wrong. Everybody trades with the Russians. Not a question of trade. Are you dependent upon them so that you can fight them? If you're dependent upon them, you can't fight them. If you're dependent upon them for your energy, for your heat in the winter, you're shooting a sitting duck. There's no way you can fight the Russians. And that's what has Trump all riled up. You don't have the commitment to protect yourself. You want somebody else to protect you. And then, if there's a conflict, you're not going to get into the conflict because you're afraid your energy source will be taken. So what good are you as an ally? You're not good as an ally. You might as well stop the charade right now, and I'll save a lot of money. And everybody who's getting shrill and upset, they don't know what they're talking about. But here you see an example of what the Torah says. The Torah says, Lo yachil dvaro, he shall not make his words cheap. And he shall fulfill, kechol hayotzeh mipiv yaseh, as whatever he says, he should do. If you want people to believe in you, you fulfill your promises. And he said he's going to do this, and he's doing it. And by golly, if he doesn't do it, and doesn't follow through, then not only will he have shown his true colors, the NATO alliance will automatically fall apart. It's got nothing to do with what Trump is saying. On the contrary, what he's saying is building up NATO. What the Germans are doing, and what the rest of Europe is doing, is taking out NATO. If they don't have the wherewithal to finance their defense, they cannot expect the United States to defend them. Im eina nili mili. If I'm not for myself, who is for myself? In World War II, America entered after being attacked by Japan on the side of Great Britain, because Great Britain was fighting a war. And therefore, since they were fighting, the Americans joined. But if they're not going to do the fight in Europe, why does America have to join? There is no purpose of America joining. America's got no vested interest there, doesn't need them. America's self-sufficient. America does not need the Europeans as trading partners. So, there you have it. Torah says, keep your word. That's what Trump is doing. And guess what? When you keep your word, if you keep it, you win. If you don't keep it, you lose. So that's the story in a nutshell. That's the parsha. And that's what's going on.